Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week, Mississippi's 2022 congressional elections kick off with a shocker in the 3rd District. Republican incumbent Michael Guest faces a runoff election and a serious challenge from newcomer Michael Cassidy. We'll recap our election night analysis and look at the former naval aviator who has shaken up that race. And Mississippi's sole Democratic congressman gavels in primetime public hearings on the January 6th attack on Capitol Hill. That's all ahead this Sunday on Mississippi Insight. Election politics in Mississippi just got a lot more interesting. Tuesday congressional primaries set the stage for not one, but two big runoff elections on June 28th. Republican Trent Kelly in the 1st District and Democrat Bennie Thompson in the 2nd easily beat back primary challengers in Tuesday's low turnout vote. They'll move on to the general election in November. But our 3rd and 4th District congressmen had a harder time of it. 4th District Republican Stephen Palazzo faced 6 challengers and got less than 32% of the vote. He'll face former Jackson County Sheriff Mike Ezell on the 28th. And the real shocker of the night, the 3rd District's Michael Guest faced a strong challenge from political newcomer Michael Cassidy, who edged out the incumbent by less than 300 votes. Your local election headquarters had expert analysis on the primaries, and even they didn't see the Guest-Cassidy runoff coming. My colleague Melanie Christopher and I talked with Republican strategist Austin Barbour and State Democratic Party Chairman Tyree Irving. I think the biggest surprise tonight is in the 3rd District there, where Congressman Michael Guest now just minutes ago took the lead in that race against Michael Cassidy. Surprise of that race and where it's been going tonight?
Totally a shock. I can't even use the word surprise. I got to say the word shock here. Look, we just saw what always happens is Rankin County comes in last. It's just the way it always happens in Republican primaries or general elections. Rankin County came in. That's his home county. He's doing well. He's at nearly 70%. But listen, here's what's out is Lincoln County. I've had many a campaign election night where you're looking there going, wait a minute, we're really close to winning or losing. What's out? So if you're in the Cassidy campaign or the Guest campaign, you were absolutely finding out what are precinct results in Brookhaven and Lincoln County. We don't have any of that data, but I think looking at what's out and what's in, the Guest is going to barely survive tonight. He's at 51.1. All he needs is 50% plus 1 vote, and it looks like he's going to just edge out and avoid a runoff, but there's still votes out.
Surprised by what's going on with the district there?
Yeah, it is a surprise. No question about it. I think the conventional wisdom was that Guest would walk away with it fairly easily. And I agree, it looks like he may pull it out, but it's going to be close. And if he gets it at 50 plus 1, and he's the incumbent, he's still got a long way to go to November. You know, I'm representing the Democratic Party as the chairman of the party. And it doesn't matter whether he or Cassidy, we'll do what we got to do in November to try to be victorious. But it is a surprise. It's absolutely a surprise. In fact, I think I could probably agree with my counterpart over there. It's a shock that it's this close. Cassidy is a MAGA fella on steroids. And I just didn't think in the 3rd District he would be as successful as it appearing that he is tonight.
All right. The one to watch also, of course, is the Republican primary in Mississippi's 4th District incumbent Stephen Palazzo, now facing a challenger in the runoff there. Do we think that, how do you figure that's going to turn out?
Yeah, listen, I think most people who pay attention to Mississippi politics saw Palazzo headed towards a runoff. I thought he would be above 40, between 40 and 45. He's barely above 30 right now. I think 10% of Jackson County is out. Sheriff Ezell, looks like that he's going to get into the runoff if I have to look at the numbers with Palazzo. He's the sheriff, the 2-term sheriff of Jackson County. He's probably going to slide in, and it's going to be a 3-week war to see who can survive that runoff, whether it's going to be the incumbent or whether it be the challenger, the sheriff of Jackson County. Again, Ezell hadn't made it yet, but if you just look at the numbers, I think that's what will happen is Ezell will end up there.
Johnny Dupree has run statewide before and is well known down in Hattiesburg, and he's running for that seat as a Democrat. What are his chances, do you believe, whoever he runs against on the Republican side?
Well, you know, you got to. If your name is on the ballot, you can win. He's our nominee now, and we're going to do all that we can to make sure that he is victorious in November. As you mentioned, he does have name recognition because he's been out here before, and there's just no reason why he shouldn't benefit from Republicans beating up on themselves down there in the 4th District to get a nominee. So we think his chances will be good. Certainly the Democratic Party is going to do all it can to make sure that we give Mississippi a better look from the 4th District.
How about in that 1st district, Trent Kelly winning easily there? Are you going to mount a good defense there?
Well, we're going to do what we can do there as well. You know, Ms. Black, it will be I believe the first female nominee for either the Democratic or the Republican Party, I believe. You know, her chances are, well, I'll put it this way. There's an old saying that if your name is on the ballot, you can't win. The only way you sure can't win if your name is not on the ballot. And we're going to do all we can there in the 1st district as well. You know, I've been chairman of the party just a little bit under 2 years, but we got some surprises coming. It may not happen this year, but it's going to happen in Mississippi. The Democratic Party is on its way back.
And real quickly,
I'm going to say this. I'm going to call this the power of WJTV. My phone is lighting up with precinct results from Lincoln County, which show Guest winning Lincoln County. I think that's night for Cassidy, and Guest is going to I would almost be willing to 100% bet that Guest will survive and avoid a runoff. But not
is
a
it
good
a wake-up
night.
call?
It's a wake-up call. You know, we learn in politics at an early age. You got to run hard. And you got to run to the end. And I'm sure the congressman feels like he did, but the electorate is temperamental at worst right now.
All right.
all right.
Very
Thank
interesting.
you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you, fellas, really.
Thank you.
Tuesday's election results had a lot of people, including us, wondering who is Michael Cassidy. 12 News' Tal Taw has a profile on the man who helped make the race for the 3rd District seat a cliffhanger.
Michael Cassidy describes himself as a maintenance test pilot and a former full-time naval aviator. He has no political background, but he pulled in about 47% of the vote Tuesday and advanced to a runoff with Mississippi Congressman Michael Guest.
Message, it's a good message, and of America first.
Cassidy decided to throw his hat into the race about 2 months ago.
You know, I was hoping that somebody else would do it, to be perfectly honest. I'd rather, I enjoy flying jets. I joined the military because of 9/11, and I wanted to, as a kid, when that happened, I said, I got to defend the country.
Much of Cassidy's campaign has centered on positioning himself as more conservative than the incumbent. At one point during Tuesday's primary election, Guest called Cassidy a liar for claiming he was not truly pro-life.
And that is a lie in its own. The problem that he has and that his campaign has is that they have assumed this idea that he is pro-life.
Guest of Brandon ran under new congressional maps because of this year's redistricting. The former naval aviator says he's focused on election integrity and securing the border.
You've got to have a parent, at least one parent who's an American, to be considered an American.
Up next, Bennie, Thompson, and Liz Cheney present the case against Donald Trump. 17 months after extremists stormed the halls of Congress, the January 6th committee begins a month of televised hearings. We'll hear from Mississippi's own when Mississippi Insight continues.
Proud of your boy! Proud of your boy! Proud of your boy!
Yeah, just for awareness, be advised, there's probably about 300 Proud Boys. They're marching eastbound in this 400 block of kind of Independence, actually on the mall towards the United States Capitol.
What happened last Thursday night once again turned America's attention to the events of January 6, 2021. Hundreds of supporters then President Donald Trump overpowering security in Capitol Hill, forcing their way onto the halls of Congress itself, all in an apparent attempt to overturn the 2020 election and keep Mr. Trump in power. And Thursday, the Congressional Select Committee investigating the attack took their findings to the public in a live hearing on primetime television. We wanted to play some key excerpts from this presentation, not only from Committee Chairman Bennie Thompson of Mississippi, but also from Liz Cheney, his partner in leading this probe. First, here's the 2nd District Democrat kicking off the hearing.
I'm Bennie Thompson, Chairman of the January 6, 2021 Committee. I was born, raised, and still live in Bolton, Mississippi, a town with a population of 521, which is midway between Jackson and Vicksburg, Mississippi, and the Mississippi River. I'm from a part of the country where people justify the actions of slavery, the Ku Klux Klan, and lynching. I'm reminded of that dark history as I hear voices today try and justify the actions of the insurrectionists on January 6, 2021. Over the next few weeks, hopefully you will get to know the other members, my colleagues up here, and me. We represent a diversity of communities from all over the United States, rural areas and cities, East Coast, West Coast, and the Heartland. All of us have one thing in common. We swore the same oath. That same oath that all members of Congress take upon taking office and afterwards every 2 years if they are reelected. We swore an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The words of the current oath taken by all of us that nearly every United States government employee takes have their roots in the Civil War. Throughout our history, the United States has fought against foreign enemies to preserve our democracy, electoral system, and country. When the United States Capitol was stormed and burned in 1814, foreign enemies were responsible. Afterward, in 1862, when American citizens had taken up arms against this country, Congress adopted a new oath to help make sure no person who had supported the rebellion could hold a position of public trust. Therefore, Congresspersons and United States federal government employees were required for the first time to swear an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That oath was put to test on January 6, 2021. The police officers who held the line that day honored their oath. Many came out of that day bloodied and broken. They still bear those wounds, visible and invisible. They did their duty. They repelled the mob and ended the occupation of the Capitol. They defended the Constitution against domestic enemies so that Congress could return, uphold our own oath, and count your votes to ensure the transfer of power, just as we've done for hundreds of years. Donald Trump lost the presidential election in 2020. The American people voted him out of office. It was not because of a rigged system. It was not because of voter fraud. Donald Trump had his days in court to challenge the results. He was within his rights to seek those judgments. In the United States, law-abiding citizens have those tools for pursuing justice. He lost in the courts, just as he did at the ballot box. And in this country, that's the end of the line. But for Donald Trump, that was only the beginning of what became a sprawling, multi-step conspiracy aimed at overturning the presidential election, aimed at throwing out the votes of millions of Americans, your votes. your voice in our democracy, and replacing the will of the American people with his will to remain in power after his term ended. Donald Trump was at the center of this conspiracy, and ultimately, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, spurred a mob of domestic enemies of the Constitution to march down the Capitol and subvert American democracy. Any legal jargon you hear about seditious conspiracy, obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the United States boils down to this. January 6th was the culmination of an attempted coup, a brazen attempt, as one rioter put it shortly after January 6th, to overthrow the government. The violence was no accident. It represented Trump's last stand, most desperate chance to halt the transfer of power. Now, you may hear those words and think, this is just another political attack on Donald Trump by people who don't like him. That's not the case. My colleagues and I all wanted an outside independent commission to investigate January 6th, similar to what we had after 9/11. But after first agreeing to the idea, Donald Trump's allies in Congress put a stop to it. Apparently, they don't want January 6th investigated at all. And in the last 17 months, many of those same people have tried to whitewash what happened on January 6th, to rewrite history, call it a tourist visit, label it legitimate political discourse. Donald Trump and his followers have adopted the words of the songwriter, "Do you believe me or your lying eyes?" We can't sweep what happened under the rug. The American people deserve answers. So I come before you this evening, not as a Democrat, but as an American who swore an oath to defend the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't protect just Democrats or just Republicans. It protects all of us, we the people. And this scheme was an attempt to undermine the will of the people.
That's Mississippi Democrat and January 6th Committee Chair Bennie Thompson. We'll hear from the Congressman from Wyoming after a quick break.
Mr. Chairman, at 6:01 p.m. on January 6th, after he spent hours watching a violent mob besiege, attack, and invade our Capitol, Donald Trump tweeted, but he did not condemn the attack. Instead, he justified it. "These are the things and events that happen," he said, "when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who've been badly and unfairly treated for so long." As you will see in the hearings to come, President Trump believed his supporters at the Capitol, and I quote, "We're doing what they should be doing." This is what he told his staff as they pleaded with him to call off the mob, to instruct his supporters to leave. Over a series of hearings in the coming weeks, you will hear testimony, live and on video, from more than half a dozen former White House staff in the Trump administration, all of whom were in the West Wing of the White House on January 6th. You will hear testimony that, quote, "The president did not really want to put anything out, calling off the riot or asking his supporters to leave." You will hear that President Trump was yelling and, quote, "really angry at advisors who told him he needed to be doing something more." There's a reason why people serving in our government take an oath to the Constitution. As our founding fathers recognized, democracy is fragile. People in positions of public trust are duty-bound to defend it, to step forward when action is required. In our country, we don't swear an oath to an individual or a political party. We take our oath to defend the United States Constitution, and that oath must mean something. Tonight, I say this to my Republican colleagues: who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain. Finally, I ask all of our fellow Americans, as you watch our hearings over the coming weeks, please remember what's at stake. Remember the men and women who have fought and died so that we can live under the rule of law, not the rule of men.
Big thanks to Austin Barbour, Tyree Irving, and Tao for their help with election coverage this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.